Hi and welcome to our next session, Inform and Inspire, how Insider founder Henry Blodget built a global family of digital media brands. We've seen quite a lot of native digital media brands popping up over the past decade or so, sometimes with enormous reach, with gigantic evaluations. And let's be honest, not all of them are still as prosperous as they seemed to be a couple years ago. Insider Inc., though, is a bit different. They are still growing, they seem to prosper a lot, and that's why we thought it's a good moment to talk to the man who started it all, who is the founder and CEO of Insider Inc. Please welcome Henry Blodget, who is with us from New York. Can you hear me, Henry?
I certainly can. Thank you so much for having me. It's very kind.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry not to be there in person. And also thank you for allowing me to speak English. I'm afraid the conversation would be very simple if we were speaking in German.
No problem. We're glad you're taking the time. I already said it. It seems to be like a huge success. What was initially a small, rather niche tech blog is now a global endeavor with 250 million users. So when you launched this small blog called Silicon Alley Insider, did you imagine you would eventually build this huge media brand? I mean, with 500 journalists, with 17 global editions?
I would like to say yes, but no. If you had said this is what it will become, I would have said that's a happy dream, but it's crazy. I remember in the early days to our staff of about 3 people, I said, look, someday we will be so enormous that we will have 50 journalists. And everybody looked at me and said, well, he is crazy, but maybe we will go along for the ride anyway. So it has been much, much larger than I thought in the beginning. And we feel extraordinarily fortunate. As you mentioned, the digital media industry is going through what I would describe as a consolidation phase. And this is because there were many digital media companies that were created. And in the beginning, there was a lot of opportunity and few companies, but then soon there were hundreds of companies and the same opportunities. So the competition was intense. And then also, all the legacy media companies also suddenly realized the future is digital, we must invest in digital. And so there was even more competition. So the last 5 years really have been a very tough period for digital media companies, lots of consolidation. I think that will continue over the next 5 years, but we feel extremely fortunate that we have been able to do as well as we have over this period.
I mean, you had a career before. You were a pretty successful equity research analyst. Is that something that prepared you for this endeavor, or is it a completely different path to turn to journalism and build a media brand?
It's an excellent question, and the answer is it's actually very helpful preparation for this. And I was a journalist before. I was an equity analyst for many years, and then I went to Wall Street for about 10 years. But the training that I got on Wall Street in analysis, business model analysis, and writing for a smart audience was very helpful when it came to starting Silicon Alley Insider. And it was helpful both on the journalism side, but also on the business side. And what was interesting for me as a journalist is I had to learn that journalism is a lot more than just analysis. My journalism is very analytical, and that is appealing to a small group of people, but lots of journalism is about features and excellent investigative reporting and other things that I had to learn in developing it. But as preparation, it was good. And I saw lots of companies go from just an idea to huge companies. So that wasn't surprising to me, and I had good training in that. So overall, I think it was very helpful training.
I mean, if we're being completely honest here, it was not 100% by choice, because in 2003 you were banned from the financial securities industry. What do you say today? Would you have made this switch sooner or later if that hadn't happened?
It's true, and you're, of course, you bring that up. It's a terrible period
Sorry.
in my life, so
Sorry.
I don't like to be reminded of it. But it was very important. And as you say, no. I think the answer is no. I was finished with what I was doing as a sell side equity analyst, but I probably would have gone to a hedge fund or a money manager. And so having that no longer be an option forced me to do other things. And I just feel incredibly fortunate that I was able to use some of my earlier experience to do something that has been extraordinarily rewarding, and I probably would not have done it. But it's one of those interesting experiences in life where some doors get closed to you and you are forced to go in a different direction, but it turns out to be an amazing thing. So in hindsight, I was lucky, although it did not feel that way at the time.
What would you say was the original spirit of your blog, of the Silicon Alley Insider, and have you managed to keep anything of this spirit until today?
I think the key to our success in the beginning, and in the beginning when we started, it was three of us, and I was one of the journalists, and there were two other journalists, and the first day we typed very fast, and we each wrote 5 to 10 different articles, and we had about 2,000 visitors, and we thought, oh, that's a great start, and we're going to do fine. But then the next few days, the visitors went down because it wasn't new, and we were very worried. But our philosophy was that digital would create a new kind of journalism and a new kind of distribution and a new economic model. And a lot of our competitors in the beginning were trying to do what everybody was doing in newspapers or do what everybody was doing in television and sort of take it online and say it's going to be exactly the same. And what we thought is, no, it will be different. We need to figure out what is different and what is valuable to the internet audience. And that was a very helpful philosophy. We tried many, many things that did not work, and we stopped doing those, and we kept doing the things that worked. And that was important. And to your question, as we get bigger, it changes. And as you have more and more people who have not experienced the beginning years, you have to tell them with a philosophy and what we're trying to do. And the company has to change a lot. And that is difficult. But we have an amazing team. So far, we've been very fortunate. And again, I just feel so lucky to have the team that we have.
But how exactly do you do that? I mean, there is an enormous risk, I would assume, in that immense growth when you become a global media brand instead of a small blog. You might want to keep, I guess, some of the philosophy, some of the spirit that you had initially, because it eventually led you to success. So how do you manage that people don't forget about it?
No, that's also an excellent point. And so we try to maintain a spirit of entrepreneurialism and focus on the audience. And all the time, every day, there is pressure from the outside to be like legacy companies or to be like a newspaper. And lots of people are very well-meaning when they say that. They say, you should do it this way because this is the way newspapers do it. And there are some good ideas in that, but there are other ideas that would actually not be good for digital. And so we have to be very careful not to just do what people from newspapers or television are telling us we should be doing. And fortunately, we have built, as I said, a great team, and so many people on the team understand that, and they like it, and it's exciting, and they feel, in addition to doing journalism, they feel like we are inventing the future of media. And so that's very exciting to a lot of our people. And so we've been able to retain that.
I mean, one sign of your growth also in different areas is, of course, that Earlier this year, you dropped business from the official site name in the US. Of course, here we still know Business Insider best. Can you explain a little bit what was the thinking behind this change?
Of course. So when we started, as you mentioned, we were a tech blog for New York City called Silicon Alley Insider. And one thing that was interesting in the early days was we were writing about small New York companies, and then we wrote a couple of stories about Apple. And the readership on those stories was much higher than anything we had written about New York. And I obviously had a background as a tech analyst. I said then we should cover all tech. We shouldn't just focus on New York. So we began to change. Then 2 years later, we said, this is great. The tech industry is fantastic, and we are making journalism that helps here. But we should do this for finance and other industries too. And so we changed to Business Insider. And then about 5 years later, we began to write lots of stories about lifestyle and food and travel. And we began to hear from our readers, wait a minute, this is not business. I like it, but why are you writing this story? You should be writing about business. And so we began to feel that our name was constricting our opportunity. And so we started a new blog called Insider, which started with video, and we grew that alongside Business Insider. And then eventually we decided it would make sense to just combine into a single company called Insider. And so we changed the name last year, and so far that's going well. But as I explained to our team, there will be many, many, many years where people call us Business Insider, and that's okay. They can call us whatever they want. We just want to say thank you for reading.
By the way, a quick hint for our audiences. Whenever you have a question for Henry, please just type it into the chat, and it will show up here on my screen, and I will ask it. But first, let's go on with my questions. Can you explain to us a little bit how does the decision-making work when it comes to those new content, to those new verticals or sub-brands? How do you decide what makes sense for you and what doesn't?
Another excellent question.
Thank you.
What's helpful for us is that we can always see what our audience is interested in. And we've developed many ways of telling stories that are different from print journalism. Print journalism and other television journalism. And so we always think, well, we can tell stories in this way in other industries and in other topics. And so sometimes we experiment and we see what our audience is very interested in. And so that makes it easier for us to make a decision. If there's a topic that we think that our audience is very interested in, we can put a team of journalists on that, and then they can build the new vertical. So it's actually easier than it would be if we had no insight into our audience.
Mm-hmm. Do you see any limitation as to what fits under the Insider umbrella, or is it basically limitless? I mean, I guess that if someone would have told you in the days of Silicon Alley Insider you would be publishing lifestyle or showbiz content, you would have probably gave them an eye.
Well, I would have said, wow, that sounds like fun. I don't know that we will ever be able to do that. But no, I think that in theory, it is limitless. And the reason is this is a very important distinction between traditional media and digital. And it's very similar to what we see in e-commerce also, is that in traditional media, you are forced as a publication either to be very deep and very focused or to be very broad. Like Build is very broad, and then there are other publications that are very narrow and focused. In digital, as with Amazon and other e-commerce companies, you can theoretically, you can be both deep and broad. And so theoretically, it's limitless. But in practice, what makes it difficult is you have to be really good at everything you do. There are so many exceptionally good journalism companies out there that you need to be really good at what you do. And so that makes it difficult. And we are trying to expand at a rate where we can be very good at everything that we do. And so that actually is a limit in practice.
But what then are your actual growth objectives? I mean, I say it again, 17 global editions in 8 languages right now, a growing number of sub-brands. What more can we expect?
Well, we have an internal goal, which is right now we reach about 500 million people around the world every month. And that is including our own websites, but also including people that we reach on Facebook and YouTube with our video and Snapchat and other platforms. We want to, in 5 years, reach about 1 billion people a month. So a bigger audience. And then we also want to have a very core base of readers who are subscribers. And so right now we have over 100,000 subscribers. We want to grow that to over 1 million. And then we think that we can grow that beyond that as well. And then we want to continue to grow our newsroom. As you said, we have more than 500 journalists now. We think that ultimately we can have over 1,000. And so we want to continue to do what we're doing and get better every day. That is our philosophy. And we will continue to try to do that.
Let's dig a little bit deeper into the business side then. What do you think you did better than some of the other huge digital competitors who had like enormous funding, but who we see them now that they are either merging with others to form bigger entities or, quite frankly, getting out of business?
I think we did a few things that in hindsight were very important. One, as I said, we viewed digital as being, it was going to develop a different kind of business model, different kind of distribution, and we were very open-minded about that. Other companies, we noticed, really tried to recreate a newspaper or recreate a television station in digital, and that did not work very well. Another thing that we did is we stayed very focused on the actual readership and viewership of the journalism that we produced. I think a lot of companies, they made wonderful journalism, but it was not being consumed by the audience. So they were making great videos, but the videos weren't being watched very much, or the articles weren't being read very much. And we thought it was very important always to try to really focus on producing journalism that our audience cared about. And we wanted to know how to do that and how to distribute it, and that helped. And then I think the other thing that helped us, the third thing, is that we stayed focused on journalism. Many other companies raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and they decided to become more complete media companies like Disney, for example, where they had a big movie and fiction division, and then they had their little news division that was part of it, but they were doing many, many things. We just wanted to focus on just the journalism piece, and so that has helped us a lot.
But isn't that also tempting in a way? I mean, if I think about companies like Buzzfeed, of course, when you have a certain content, a certain journalistic kind of content that everybody wants to read, and players like Netflix or Amazon ask you, can't you do video for us? I mean, that is tempting. It's not for you?
No, it's extremely tempting. And we saw BuzzFeed raising so much money, and their valuation was so huge, and they were so cool. And lots of our team said, wait, why are we not cool like BuzzFeed? Why are we not making movies? And why are we not doing this? We should do that. We could do that. And the decision that we made was we can't be good at everything. And we did not raise several $100 million, so we did not have the ability to be as aggressive as BuzzFeed was. And also, and this is very much a personal decision, and also the decision of our core team, what we really were passionate about was great journalism. I love movies, but I don't know how to make movies. And so I didn't start this company to say we will become an amazing movie company studio eventually. What I started it for was journalism and reaching people. And so one of the things that Steve Jobs was, if you try to do too many things, you will not be good at everything. And so we tried to be very disciplined and stay focused, and ultimately that has worked for us.
I mean, what you also did, of course, was diversify revenue streams, not solely relying on advertising. Can you talk a little bit, for example, about your experience so far with paid content?
It's another very good point that has really helped us is we were, again, open-minded about what the business model would ultimately look like. And we have advertising on our websites, which is a very powerful revenue stream and very important for us. But we also saw and believed early that there could be revenue from what we describe as syndication, where we send our journalism to Facebook and to LinkedIn and to Microsoft and Yahoo and many other platforms. And in the beginning, that seemed very controversial because there was not much revenue. But we believed that ultimately, if people found our journalism on those platforms and liked it, that there would be revenue associated with it. And so that has helped. And then, as you mentioned, we watched several companies that were experimenting with subscriptions, and we saw that that became a very powerful revenue stream for them. And for a long time, there was an argument in journalism circles about which is better, advertising or subscriptions. And it was always either or. And our philosophy was, no, it's both. And in newspapers, it was both. And in television, it was always both. You have advertising and you have affiliate fees from your cable network partners. And so our hope was that we would be able to build a model that had both, because that seemed to be the most powerful model. And so far that is happening. It's a different business and we're still pretty early in subscriptions, but we're very pleased and feel fortunate about how it's going.
But what are the criteria that content has to fulfill so that you feel comfortable selling it directly to your readers instead of giving it for free and financing it through ads?
Another great question. We experimented a lot with that in the beginning. And what we found is that readers are happy to pay a subscription for original journalism that they can't find anywhere else. And so our mission is to produce great journalism that people care about enough to pay us a subscription, and we get better and better at that. It prohibits, or it allows us to do much more deeper, more focused journalism on particular industries that would be difficult to pay for with just an advertising model. And so that's great. So the combination of advertising and subscriptions has allowed us to create a much broader range of journalism for our audience, and that is working well.
Yeah, and then a couple of years ago, something happened that, especially from a German perspective, was very interesting. You decided to sell to Axel Springer. Why them?
Over the first 8 years of the company, we frequently would have bigger companies come talk to us and they say, oh, we would love to talk about acquiring you. And the first meeting was always great. It was like a first date and it's very exciting. And then the second meeting was always the topic, let's talk about synergy. And what they mean is, how many of your team can we fire to cut costs and make the economics way better? And we didn't like that idea. And we also realized that a lot of the companies that were talking to us, they didn't really care about journalism. Journalism for them was something that people thought was good to do, but was expensive and was not the main cash engine of the company. And so we didn't really feel like it was core to what they did. And then Axel Springer had invested in us a year before the acquisition. We didn't know the company very well, but one thing that was very attractive to us was Axel Springer was founded as a journalism company. They really care about it. Matthias Duffner really cares about journalism. It's what they do at the core level. So we really like that. And then also what Axel Springer said is we don't want to have synergy with you. What we want you to do is continue to build the amazing company that you're building. And so we don't want you to cut people to make economic numbers. And so that was very meaningful to us. And we knew that eventually venture capital is not a great financing source for journalism because journalism companies tend to grow at a steady or slower rate than these tech companies where they launch Monday and by Thursday they're worth $10 billion and they reach 100 billion people or 100 million people. So we knew we would have to eventually have a new source, a new owner. And Axel Springer just seemed perfect. And so we were very excited to do it.
Do you still think they're perfect? I mean, over the last week, the rest of Business America learned about them. I mean, you knew them perfectly, I guess, but since last week's New York Times article about sex, money, and journalism at Axel Springer, the rest of the country knows them too, and not too good a light, quite frankly. So do you still think they are the perfect shareholder for a US media company?
I think they're an excellent shareholder, and obviously it's always challenging sometimes between a shareholder and a company, and you talk through it, and as long as the values and principles are in line, you work through it, and for the most part, it's been terrific. Obviously, that was a very startling article, and a lot of our team here read it and said, "Ooh, this sounds bad," and I know it's been a tough week for Axel Springer. And one of the things that's been important that we have told our team is Axel Springer owns many companies. And I know that in Germany, they are very much associated with Bild, but they own lots of companies and Bild is just one company. And I think that they have made some decisions that are positive for the future. But obviously, it's been a tough week for our colleagues at Axel Springer in Germany.
In addition, they now own Politico in the US. Does that mean anything for you? Is there an impact on Insider's business, or do you expect it to stay two completely separate businesses?
I think one of the things that Axel Springer has done extremely well over the last 15 years is they have made many acquisitions, and unlike other companies, they have not screwed them up. And the way that they do that is they give the companies that they buy independence to develop their businesses in the best way for that particular business. And so we expect it will be the same with Politico. Politico is an incredibly powerful company, and they're doing very well financially. And so Axel Springer's plan is to keep us separate. There may be ways that we can work together that will help both companies. And if so, we look forward to exploring that. It's wonderful to be colleagues with their team. They're really good. But we're not expecting to be combined with them or to change anything fundamentally.
Henry, that's really been exciting to hear from you directly about your key to success and about where you see Insider going. Thank you so much again for taking the time, for joining us virtually today. And of course, I hope you'll be able to make it in person here next year or the year after. You're always welcome to Medientage München. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being patient with my English and also with doing an interview with me in Brooklyn, New York. And I very much look forward to being there in person at some point. Thank you very much.
Great. Have a great day. Bye.
You too.